All right, welcome everyone to the API work group meeting. For today, we post or share the agenda here. We've got basically, this is the agenda for some of the topics. I don't see the attendees have joined yet. Who will cover those? So in the meantime, we'll continue through the other that are in here. So the first item that I wanted to go through is the timing for the workshop. What everybody's been talking about is the target date of Tuesday next week at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Does that sound reasonable from everybody's standpoint, or do we need to change the date? Thoughts on that, John?
Mark, I know Intel's having their innovation summit Tuesday and Wednesday next week, so I'm not sure if that impacts any Intel people like IPDK, etc.
Well, Dan Daly is actually the one who suggested the Tuesday date. So
okay, in that case, never mind.
And the time. So I'm like, okay.
He may have forgotten.
So, and I mean, Tuesday was the one everybody seemed to consolidate on for a day, but he picked. he said the time at 8 a.m. would be good because that gives him till 8 to 10 to cover things. So, all right. So I will go ahead. I'll finalize this. I'll get a Zoom meeting set up, and then get that posted out there into the invite for everyone. So great. So that covers that. The other topic that's on here, because I don't see some of the folks we need collectively yet to discover, to walk through any of these open issues and storage, or look at the EVPN question that's on 148, is looking at the agenda. This is what I kind of threw together for an initial agenda. I've already seen a request to also bring in the IPDK. They'd like to discuss IPDK as a topic on the agenda, so I can add that in here also. Are there any other agenda topics that we need to look at? I put this together looking at it from the standpoint of we have to look at an architectural view of what this API should look like. So we're going to have interfaces that are going to be kind of northbound, things that will be used for orchestration, and then we'd have a southbound type interface, which is more kind of hardware facing. The question that comes up when we look at the architectural view is, what granularity do we want to expose the various parameters? So that's kind of what the architectural view is that's out there. And I'll even add the question into this. The use cases that we need to try to look at, I know we already have use cases out there for how we configure things in a cloud, how we would do an EVPN configuration that's been contributed, but we don't have some of the basic networking type functionality, the things that, get everything set up so that we can start doing the higher level configurations in some cases. Do we need to look at the configuration and tuning parameters on a port at this level, or do we not need to worry about that? VLANs, what would just be a basic VLAN topology, given that there may be some of that that's out there, or a routing topology, QoS basic configuration, static routing, et cetera, et cetera. So those are some of the things that I put into the list. Are there others that people see that we need to bring out here? Okay, very quiet group today. And then of course, when we start looking at how we configure things, how we're going to align these configurations, we have to look at things like, if we're looking at it from the standpoint of NetLink, what would the parameters that NetLink would provide? What are the parameters that we can tweak or adjust from a CNI perspective? Do we want to consider anything from OpenConfig? Not saying we use OpenConfig, but do we draw on some of the information that's in OpenConfig to align it to what this API needs to look like? What are the parameters that we would need to configure from an OVS perspective, et cetera? So these are the types of things that we can discuss in the workshop, and hopefully we'll start defining more details around the APIs that we can then use to expose the different services and bring things up and think about it from a day zero initial deployment expanding out to a day end where you're going to do changes to the configuration. So any other topics that we want to add to this? And of course we can tweak this even during the meetings. We can continue to add topics.
So on the northbound interface, the proposal is gRPC protobufs, is that correct? And so,
yes.
So then the internals are the next big bullet down below, what those parameters are and perhaps how they align with those existing standards. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So then the approach is perhaps to support more than one of those standards down below?
We want to be able to support across the different standards below. Now, I put in OpenConfig because it gives you Yang models that have a bunch of different parameter definitions in it. Doesn't mean that we'll use everything that's there. It's just, here's an example of some of the things that we could expose.
Okay, sounds good.
So I think Venkat, I think you.
Yeah, again, maybe minor nit, but I think basic networking, if we add access control list ACLs, it will become like an MVP. So it's a good list you have, and if we just add ACL here.
Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't go into everything, but that's another good one to put on the list. Okay.
I have one question. On the key use cases, VPN configuration topic, what exactly do we expect to discuss there? Because it's not really clear to me.
So from that perspective, Demetrius, my goal there is to look at what's already been contributed, and then we'll look at, that's just one of the use cases that we have, and it's really seeing, here's what's been contributed and here's what's out there. Are there pieces that are missing? Are there things that we need to do in addition to what's already there, right? So, for example, do we need to go out and do setups on the port themselves? Do we need to tweak SRIOV? Do we need to set the parameters on either dynamic or SRIOV ports, et cetera, those types of things? Because I know we have it at the high level where we're creating the bridge setups, we're creating the VTEPs and everything else, but there's probably some preliminary things that would have to be done prior to that. That makes sense?
Mark,
or
could we also consider adding some kind of tunnel NCAP decap to that list at the top?
Sure.
Because I think any overlay network use case is going to need something.
Yep.
Thank you.
And there's probably another use case that I should add in here also, just thinking it through as we're discussing, we probably need a security one. Which right now we have IPsec, but there's probably things around PKI that we need to look at in case we need to do any key manipulation. But I'll leave it as it is right there. Okay.
I think IPsec and the tunnel kind of overlap as well. Just
probably. We'll put it there too. Okay. Well, this gives us a start. All right. Trying to see if there's anyone else who's joined. No. Well, this may end up being a short meeting. I know there was a request to add these other topics to go through some of the pull requests and open issues. So collectively, if anyone out there can start looking at some of these issues to see what additional information is necessary, you know, around the storage, or, you know, we can resolve the EVPN bridge request 148, then that would be good. I'll just make that a request of the overall team. I will set up the timing and get a Zoom link set up out there. I know that Dan Daly from Intel is going to, at least he's requesting, you know, do we need to go look for a location where there could be a group of people meet somewhere out in the Santa Clara, San Jose area. But I don't know what the status of that is. He just put that request out a little while ago. So other than that, is there any other topics that people would like to cover today? Okay. Well, with that, we've got the agenda set up for next week. I don't have anything more prepared to start digging into these topics yet, so we'll start doing that next week on Tuesday. Between now and then, if you can start thinking about some of these topics, some of the areas, thoughts around what parameters you think need to be addressed or added or covered, that would be great. And then we can start actually getting some more of these protobuf definitions defined, and hopefully at some point come up with a consensus common set of protobufs that would cover all of the different cases that are out here. That's kind of what our goal is. There may be sections that are, you know, very specific to cloud, very specific to EVPN, very specific to other things, but hopefully we can get a consensus grouping of some general protobuf definitions.
One thing
yeah.
I've noticed when we've been doing this, we've been doing work with IPsec and offload, where the client part of the gRPC communication ends up is different for different use cases, because you know, your IPsec configuration is different from your data path configuration, etc. So just something to bear in mind, that there may, I'm not sure I'm explaining this correctly, but the way to think about it is the client part, how it connects into a single application, maybe have different connection points.
Mm-hmm.
You know, common server at the DPU layer, but you know.
You're thinking of it in terms of the distribution point inside of the DPU, or the distribution?
No, distribution in terms of the host of the applications. So
right. Okay.
When I want to talk IPsec, when I want to do an IPsec configuration, that's different from when I want to, you know, program a data path offload, because the data path offloads in data path and IPsec configuration is, you know, talking to SCAP or CMP, which is in a control plane application.
Right.
No.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about the distribution at the control plane, which basically means that, you know, one of the things that we've looked at, and I think it's somewhat common in the bridge implementations that have been put out there so far, but you can essentially create a trying to think of the right term to put it, basically a distribution point inside the DPU where you can have different gRPC shims essentially that are going to handle, you know, one's going to handle like IPsec, one might be handling storage, one might be handling the data path, etc. So there's different shims that can be distributed out from the common gRPC point.
Yeah.
And it's really, you can use a port to do that distribution. So you're basically doing a sharing type of application.
Yeah, it's how you define the protofiles. Do they have a common backend piece versus just
Oh, yeah, yeah,
five
yeah. I
pieces?
see what you're saying.
Yeah, it gets a little commonality is important, but how do you do it in a way that's usable?
Yes, yeah, and makes it segmented so that you can split it across the multiple applications. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do, at least within the networking, is there's going to be hopefully a common networking blob of protobufs, and then there might be specific ones related to very unique aspects, right? So that would be like, here's your networking blob of protobufs, and then you might have a separate one that's IPsec, and you might have a separate one that's say PKI. You will have a separate one that's storage, because storage is pretty well defined right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Great. All right. Since the other folks haven't joined that were wanting to go through some of these PRs, I will defer those. We'll add them to the meeting hopefully next week, and hopefully we'll get all of the folks who want to go through that in the meeting next week. But like I said, in the meantime, take a look at the PRs, take a look at the issues, see if there's anything that you can contribute in those areas, so we can get those resolved. But with that, I will, Peter, did you have something?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Saw you go off mute. So, but with that, I will let everyone go, give you back the rest of the time. And hopefully we'll all get together on Tuesday. We'll make some really good progress on getting some of these things driven forward further. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Mark.